All right, where am I? I'm in Photoshop, a raster program, but within that Photoshop, I have a smart object of my black shape vector. I got that by dragging and dropping in my EPS. And my EPS only had black shapes, right? And no strokes. Okay, then I made a copy of my white background. And that copy I changed to Edit Fill Gray. So Edit Fill and then 50% gray. Then I made a copy of that and I made that Edit Fill with black, right? Black on black does not look that great, but it's there. So how do I get it to show up? I have to add an offset behind it. So we do this by double clicking on the layer and we get layer styles. And layer styles are made to do modifications, especially to smart objects, right? Because if it's a vector smart object, anything we do here, like adding a very basic offset, which is called a stroke, just like it is in Illustrator, right? And I change the color of it to bright white. This actually gives me more offset options than I have in Adobe Illustrator. So one is that I can make that offset pretty bright, like pretty big, basically so big that it inverts my whole image. This is what's called an inside offset. So what it's doing is inside of my vector shapes, it's growing that white border. So I might like how that looks. But the problem is that changes how it would look on other surfaces. So if I say okay, this is why we have all three. Might look good on black, does not look very good on gray, right? And it would look especially bad on white. So the inside offset is not going to be the most versatile, and we want this to be clear, engaging, and versatile. So now if I just click on that stroke, double click there, we'll open this up. So I'm going to change it to a center offset. This is how Illustrator uses strokes, always centered on the edge of the vector. And that can look kind of nice and clean, but again, it's not going to work the best on all these different surfaces. And we want a black shape logo that works good on all backgrounds. So what offset do we want to use? We want to use the one that goes outside of our vector shapes. Yeah, behind it. Does not overtake it. So that is called outside. So when you're using the stroke, you want it 100% white, you want it 100% opacity, you want it normal mode, and you want it outside. This is something that strokes in Illustrator you can set to do, but it's not the default. And here you can decide, okay, now you see, I can just see the barest, there's a 1 pixel outline of my vector shapes. What would look good? Maybe like that. All right, now let's see how that looks. That's how my design would look on black. How would it look on gray? Yeah, that looks pretty good. How does it look on white? Well, that makes sense. That's exactly how it should look on white. So I can play with that offset. That's one way of doing an offset. But this one, you see, it's kind of messing with the interior a little bit. So what's kind of the most professional way to do an offset? It is this. So I'm going to turn off the stroke completely, and I'm going to make a duplicate, Command J, of my black shape logo. And I usually design on gray, because if it works on gray, it will work on white, it will work on black. Now, on the copy that's underneath, I'm going to click on Layer Styles. Actually, what I want to do first is I want to use the magic wand, and I want to click on Contiguous. Okay? And then I want to click on the background. I want to click on contiguous, so contiguous is actually checked. The default is 32, so I want to select that empty space. Now what I want to do is I want to make a new layer, and I'm going to say select the inverse and fill that, edit fill with white, 100% white. So if I was printing this logo on a black t-shirt, right, this would be the offset layer. It's just, think of it as paint primer. So whatever shape your logo is, you make a duplicate of it and you fill that entirely with white. The reason that color overlay doesn't do that is because color overlay will just, all the undercuts will be there, right? So if you want an option of where it's always going to show up, you can do that, and then you can add the offset to that base layer. So I'm going to grow it on the outside a little bit, and I want that much. So now, this is how you get your black logo to look good on any surface, right? One of these two approaches. And you get to choose, do I want the full background, right? Or do I want it sorry, let's turn the stroke on here. Or do I want it like this on the outside? And that way, either way, it will work on all settings. So that is an offset. This can help you think about coloring. So once you've made those decisions, now I can think, well, what's a color variation I might like? And again, I'm going to design it with the gray background. So I'm going to make a duplicate of my black logo shapes, the smart object. And now I'm going to change the color overlay from black to something else. So it's Earth Day, so maybe I use a really bold green. Right. So that might be a nice start. That's what's called, just a full bleed color, a flat color. Or I can turn that off and I can do it with a gradient instead. And so we're going to learn a lot about gradients. So I've made a lot of, and I use a lot of custom gradients, but the nice thing about gradients is they can be created and modified. So even if you use just basic ones, we can modify. So is there anything I kind of like here that works on gray? Ooh, I kind of like this, kind of the southwest. So now let's modify it. Click on the gradient. You see that you can play with it this way. We can add colors to it. Maybe I don't want white. Maybe I want green instead, right? And you can play with their arrangement. Maybe I don't want gray here. Maybe I want, let's see, maybe let's do a blue. And now I can kind of work between these. And then when I say okay, then I can play with the scale of it in the image, right? So there might just be a hint of blue and green. I can play with the tilt of it. And I can even play with whether it's linear or whether it's radial. I don't usually use these ones, but sometimes they're interesting. And then you can always play with the organization of it, right? So there's kind of the blue and the green in the middle there. If I want a little bit more of that green, I can just dial it in. And then I can add maybe another green right there. You just click on the spectrum and then you add it. Or maybe a bluish green. Yeah, that's getting closer. Okay, now this is what I like. Remember, this is all on our vector, so we're not hurting our image at all. These are all additions to it. I can turn on the color overlay over the top of my gradient overlay, and then I can blend the two. Right? And I can blend the two with multiple layer styles. So I can set dissolve, which I really like to do with these, because it will give kind of a paper texture to the color mixing. Especially for something that's kind of nuggety, like like an Earth Day badge. But maybe I play with soft light. You know, that kind of deepens the greens a little bit. Maybe I play with pin light. That softens the colors a little bit. I can even make it the opposite. So there's lots and lots of options. My goal is not for you to have the most amazingly well thought out color logo. It's for you to understand that once you have a good black shape, you can do an infinite variety of color variations that will always be clean, just using layer styles. So I think I liked, let's see, I think I liked dissolve, and I'll just take it down quite a bit. And I'll change this color so that dissolve really kind of fits into everything a little bit. All right, now what if I want to do what's called local color? Because this is my color image. I like the inside, but I don't want the outside stripe to be that same rainbow. So now I use my magic wand with contiguous, and I select just that shape. Then I make a new layer, and I say edit fill, just that shape. And I'm going to fill it with a color. And in this case, maybe I do red. Right? Now, here's the beauty of it. That is a rasterized layer, but it's a rasterized layer that's derived from my vector. So it will be perfectly clean. And then I can play with blending that in. So if I don't want the red quite so strong, right, I can tone it down just with opacity. And I can use blending modes, and I can even use layer styles on the red. Now, what if behind my logo, I want to add a local color? What would be the negative space, now in the color version, I can color the stump differently than everything else. In fact, maybe I want to do not just the stump, but all the stripes of the texture of the log. So what I do is I create another offset, but now just of the shapes behind. And I'm going to say edit fill. This is a new layer behind my smart object. And not a new fill layer. Sorry, edit fill. And I'm going to fill this with a color. I get to pick the color. Let's do a brown. Let's just be literal. Okay, at 100% normal, right? Now that looks really off, right? So what I do is I need to understand what the shapes are. And I misunderstood them. But all of that is still in the right coverage. So what I do is I go back to my logo, and instead of just selecting with the lasso, right, I'm going to deselect. I'll turn this off for now. I'm going to use my magic wand and realize that that white is not really there. It's these shapes that are really there. I select these shapes.